Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Today on the show, we got somebody real cool. I really suggest that you listen to the intro so you can get a full spectrum of who this guy is. He's great. Today's episode is brought to you by Infinite Off-Road. Infinite Off-Road has a 25-year you break it, we replace it warranty, even covers accidental damage, and that's on all Infinite Off-Road products. They've got light bars, they've got rock lights, whips, UTV mirrors, grills, everything you could want for your UTV, they've got it on there. Now, they also carry a bunch of different parts as far as wheels, tires, suspension, anything you can think of, it's great. Infinite Off-Road, the owner's name's Mike. He is just an awesome guy. I've dealt with Mike for about 6 years now. Nothing but just extremely positive things to say about him. Their rock lights are second to none on the market. I don't know if you're on Facebook, any of the Facebook groups. Mike is constantly in there reminding people that he's a very, very reasonably priced vendor for the rock light specifically. And all the time, people are posting pictures of their rig with the lights on. They've got the widest patterns. They've got the only rock light kit that has a pure white emitter, and all the other kits mix colors, which I don't know about you guys, but it's kind of dumb because when I was a kid and I mixed a bunch of colors with paint, it all turned black. I can tell you, sure as heck didn't turn white. But, that's a story for another day or a lesson for another day. One thing I desperately want to beat in your head before we start. Go to our Facebook, go to our Instagram, get in this contest. I can't give you guys the details right now, but I have a major sponsor stepping on board, and I'm really excited for what they're going to put up for this contest. So go ahead and get signed up. You can follow; it's on almost every post we have. You can find it on Facebook, Instagram. It's gonna say our contest. All you got to do is sign up for our newsletter, give us your name, give us your email, and we go from there, and that's it. I have yet to send an email to my list right now. I probably won't send you an email for a while. But I can tell you, Rogers Racing has supported this. Dan Carter Racing, Infinite Off-Road supports it. I just tacked in. I got a brand new belt I got from somebody for a 1000 XP. I'm just going to throw it in there. But I'll tell you, y'all, this sponsor that is going to come on board, I can't release who they are yet. I think that they're really going to help us out with this contest, and one winner at the end of the Southern Rock Racing Series season is going to get a huge prize. One person is going to get it all. So get signed up. Also, if you share any of our content online, it enters you again. I'm going to go through at the end of the season. I'm going to look at all the people on my list, and I'm going to look at all the people who shared our posts over the season. If you shared it, you get another entry. Good luck, everybody. We're picking one winner. You can enter as many times as you want online by sharing, and one time by signing up. Today on the show, I have the Paul Wolff, the man himself, the reigning champion of the Rock Racing Series, North, South, Central, everything. This is the man who edged out Tim Cameron. This is one of the few who runs a Can-Am, who has run a full-body Can-Am, has done all kinds of racing. Paul talks a little bit about where he came from, because I didn't really know Paul before we got started. I just didn't know, and I was really, really, really happy with how this podcast went. Paul's a real cool dude. Paul's a super nice dude. You guys are really going to like this one. This is one of my favorites for sure. Without further ado, Paul Wolff.
Get a drink and gather round. Let's talk drivers. Let's talk rigs. Let's talk skill. You've got the best of the best in the off-road racing world. Have a seat at the table with us, and let's talk about racing on the rocks.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Paul, how you doing, man?
Doing good. I guess it's Saturday today, so doing good.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking one of your Saturday mornings to do the podcast. I think that this will be super valuable, and I'm really excited to kind of share your story with the world.
I appreciate it. I appreciate what you guys do. gives us, I guess, exposure to let us tell our side of the story,
Yeah, absolutely. And you in particular, we had a previous conversation on our first phone call. I'm really excited to kind of expound on what I've heard so far. So I just want to jump right into it. Tell me about yourself. What do you do for work? Where are you guys based out of? What's your life look like outside of racing?
Well, I guess I'll start with work. My life's pretty hectic. We get in there. So, for those everybody that doesn't know, me and Christy, which I may refer to her as my wife, we've been together a while, and we might as well be married. I just haven't done it yet.
There you go.
She hears that, she's probably going to give me a hard time too.
I'm about to say it's right in the sweet spot.
So, but we have a 5-month-old, so that added to the hectic a little bit this year. But anyways, I also, me and my brother, I got 2 brothers, I got an older brother and a younger brother. We own 2 salvage yards we do together, that my dad started, basically started when we were a kid. We actually started by going to auctions, farm auctions, and buying junk, and we would cut it up and then haul it in Monday morning. He worked, as a journeyman machinist, worked shift work, and so we'd work, depending on what week, what he was on, as far as midnights or afternoons or what. Certain times we would work, through the week after school, and then we would work Saturdays, Sundays, whatever, doing that stuff, and that's how he started the scrap business, I guess. And there's a ton of crazy stories I can tell you about doing that stuff. We used to. This is actually a funny one. If he's actually passed away now, but if he was live, he'd probably get in trouble for it.
Oh, gosh.
We used to haul tires to a place called Decatur, which is about, 3 hours away, 2.5, 3 hours from us. Yeah. And he'd get off midnights, pick us up, and during the summer, and we'd ride with him up there in a regular cab pickup truck with a 40-foot gooseneck loaded with tires, and we'd haul them and dump them. And then we'd come back. On the way back, he would sleep. He'd lay up against the doorpost and sleep and set the cruise control, and we'd steer down the interstate.
Oh, my gosh.
8, 9 years old, and he'd be like, just elbow me if you guys need me to hit the brakes or anything.
Oh, my gosh.
And when we were kids, we thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. Man. So that's amazing. So right out of the gate, you got a really good example of what it looks like to literally work yourself straight to the limit. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so he did that. And my dad and my mom had good jobs, definitely. But they ended up. I guess my dad pushed real hard to start the business we have, and so there's a lot of times money was tight and stuff, and so we learned to make do with what we had. And the reason where racing comes from and all this is we owned a salvage yard where people would bring junk cars in that ran, and like they didn't pass emissions or whatever. And so this is like when we were back in grade school. I mean, we were pretty young doing this stuff, and we didn't have 4-wheelers or nothing. Then we'd get junk cars and we'd gather them up, and on weekends, like we had 4 or 5 that still ran, we'd go out and race the cornfield against each other, being kids, and we called it wrecking racing because we hit each other, we didn't care, they were junk, so we'd go out in the field and we set up a little like circle track or whatever, and we'd race them, we'd play tag in cars. It's really a surprise one of us didn't get hurt or killed.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's kind of how we got started. So we did some pretty crazy stuff. And at the time, we didn't think, we were kids. We thought it was the coolest stuff ever.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we go into that, tell me, who you are in regards to the current racing season. How did your performance last year go? Kind of. Let's talk about last year and the previous years, because how you got into actually racing for the Southern Rock Racing Series is really neat, especially if you go back and look at Paul's social media at all. It's not too far down that you got to see where he began, and it's amazing. It's really amazing to see how it all lined up. So tell us about that. How did you get started in the side-by-side world? You went from racing cars to what next?
We raced four-wheelers. We ended up with 400 EXs, racing motocross, and just anything we could race local that we could kind of afford to go to and do. And then we just kind of kept growing from there. We started racing flat track. My brother actually got really big into flat track, and I would just go do it in between when I got a chance to do it with him.
Right.
And he did really well, and then it slowly progressed from flat track. We figured out that our bodies can't take the wrecks anymore. We're 30 years old, and it's hard to go to work on Monday after crashing a four-wheeler.
Man, it's real hard.
Yeah, and so a side-by-side was like, with age, get a cage, is like a thing.
I've never heard that. I like that a lot.
So we're to that point now, we're to that age where, we start needing roll cages and stuff. We don't bounce as good as we used to.
Yeah.
So we started getting side-by-sides, and actually I had a local guy, I guess he's from up this way, and he went and raced, I think he raced the 8-Up series with a Can-Am, and he goes, you got to have a racer. There's no way you can race Can-Ams in the rock bouncing. And I was like, and that was just kind of a ploy for me to go, prove him wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Prove everybody wrong. And so I had a bike that actually got totaled out. I wrecked it pretty bad. The frame was bent horribly on it, and so I stripped it all down and built my own chassis. And we went down in 2017 and ran Texas. I think that was the first year. Yeah, first year we ran Texas. And I actually DNF'd. I didn't even finish the race.
Oh, wow. Now, is this the yellow Maverick that you had?
Yeah, it was yellow and black.
Yeah, so like I said, Paul's on Facebook, and he's actually got an Instagram as well, and I'll have it linked in the bio below the video and the podcast and everything. You said that this, it looks like a full body, just regular chassis, just with like an extra roll cage and things like that. So you said that frame was just completely bent?
Yeah, actually that bike there, I did a backflip in it. This is, this was back before like you've seen it in the expos and all. I did it way back when. I actually watched like Tom Mentz and all them guys, Dennis Anderson. I watched them do it, and I'm like, you could do that in a side-by-side. And so I went and tried it, and there's videos somewhere on Facebook of it, and there's like 2 or 3 where I wrecked. I didn't make it around. Like there's one, I probably shot 15, 20 foot up in the air and come down on just the cage.
Man.
And, so it took a little bit to figure out how to build the ramp to make it work.
Yeah.
But once I figured out how to do the ramp, I figured like it was easy. It was like one of the easiest things I ever did. Once you got it right, it was like either it went perfect or it went horribly wrong. There was never really an in-between area.
Yeah. Now, was it just trial and error that you got it right the first time? And how much of it? You said it was kind of ramp, and like how much of it was actually driver though? Because if I had the perfect ramp in the entire world, I don't know if there's an amount of money that you could pay me to try and backflip my Razor.
It's I don't know. I guess a little bit of it's driver. I mean, to be honest, the backflip, I really didn't think it took a ton of driver skill. Once we figured out the ramp, the ramp, it was pretty much having like enough guts to hit it and be the test dummy to find out. Because it actually, the first time I did it, it took me 4 tries.
Ooh.
So I had four pretty bad wrecks, and I'm determined. So I told everybody, I was like, a bunch of buddies, I'm going to do a backflip today. And they're like, oh, no, you won't do it. You won't do it. You're scared. You won't do it. So I had to prove them wrong,
Yeah.
And so I sat there and did it until we got it down. But once we figured it out, we were like, well, this is easy now. And so then we actually did a few of them right there in a row, and once we figured out how to do it, it became really easy to do. And we figured out you could pull like all the way up to the face of the ramp and pretty much stop and put the bike low and just hit it. And just hit it wide open and then let off when you're in the air, and the bike would rotate and come right down. And,
for anybody listening, don't try it. Don't try it. I don't want to get a phone call from someone that says, "Yeah, they heard on your podcast if you stop at the bottom of the ramp and hit it wide, that you'll do a backflip." So you heard it here first. But anyways,
So anyways, the bike ended up with the frame being bent on it from a couple, not even from the back, it was from a couple other wrecks it had and stuff. And so I stripped it all down and I built a tube chassis out of it, a green 2-seat chassis that it did good in the fact that it held up really well, but it the way I built it, I had really bad visibility in it. I couldn't see anything on the passenger side of the bike, and so it just made it really hard to drive. But it did well. It held up good. We went down to Texas. I DNF'd down there. I had a stock diff in the front, which everybody knows the Can-Am diff 3-wheel drive.
So that's one of the big talking points I actually had for you is, this is the original Maverick, not the X3, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is the original, the old school Maverick.
Okay, so that old school Maverick, obviously from that Maverick to the X3, a lot changed aesthetically, and I would assume suspension as well, because it's the X3 is just leaps and bounds in suspension ahead of most everything else. But as far as the driveline goes, as far as that whole open front diff, however they want to spin it, that's always been in the Mavericks, correct?
Yeah, and it's always been a huge downfall to them. Pretty much is the diff. So that front diff's open, and it works great for like woods racing because it will lock, but it takes so they made a standard diff. It takes like 4 revolutions of one tire to lock. Well, when you're doing rock crawling or rock bouncing, you get up on a ledge and you stand on it. By the time one tire spins 4 times and it locks in, I noticed it do one of 2 things: either break. It would normally send all the power to the other tire. Well, you already got the tire spinning, and it just shock load the axle shaft. And it just blew the axle shaft right out of the other side. So it never worked out very well at all. And what I ended up doing after I figured out, obviously that diff's not going to work,
right.
I ended up cutting the front of the bike back apart, and I took a rear diff and put the front, because them original Mavericks, the transmission was on the back of the motor, and they had a rear diff in them. That was cool.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So I took that and put it and ran the gears backwards in the front of the bike and just overfilled it on oil.
Yeah.
And it's strange because they're set up. The axle shafts are all the same length. You could take stock rear axles and put in the front, and it would work perfectly fine.
Wow. So did you do this? Did you make that diff change before you went to the tube chassis, or during the tube chassis?
During the tube chassis.
Okay.
I actually took the tube chassis to Texas with a stock front diff, and ended up breaking it. Actually, I pretty much destroyed I think a 2 axles in it. We had a rough go with all the rocks down there, and then after that, I knew right away. I was like, okay, this diff's something's got to change. So this is not going to work. And so I went ahead and did that swap, put the rear diff in the front, and it ended up actually working really well. It actually made it work quite well. And then the biggest downfall I ran into was steering. With the mid-engine bike, it had so much weight on the front end that it was really hard to steer the bike.
Yeah, I believe it. So let me ask you this: just for say for example, you're just the everyday person who likes to go trail ride and climb some hills. Do you think that Can-Am open front diff system, does that work? Or is this something that, people who have Can-Ams, find a way to make it, go get the halo locker, go do something?
So I would, if you're going to go climb hills, I would definitely go with the halo locker. Now that I have, I wouldn't. So to jump forward in time a little bit, just to give you a little perspective on this, I actually started the 2018 season with a stock diff in an X3.
Wow.
In a front diff, and I put I think a torque locker in it. Yeah, I had a torque locker I put in it, and I actually broke the front diff in that bike so the first, I raced Texas. I twisted the splines in the diff. I ended up breaking the diff every race I went to.
Wow. That's expensive.
Yeah, it was bad, and so I just mangled it just constantly, and there's a lot of races like Windrock. I finished in 2-wheel drive. The front, it actually knocked the diff out of the bike. I broke a stub shaft, and the suspension cycled. And when I went up the hill, and when it, compressed, it chubbed the axle shaft over, hit the diff, and knocked the diff out. Broke all the mounts in the diff.
Oh my god!
And there's a post-race video of it somewhere.
Yeah.
And it mangled. It was just nonstop. I literally, the first 3 races of the year, I think 3 or 4 races of the year. So I went all the way to Wildcat, and that's when I finally got the halos after Wildcat. And all 3 races, I broke the front diff in the bike, and I finished in some form of 2-wheel, 3-wheel drive. Something was messed up in the front end.
Yeah.
And, we went to the halo, put the halo in. which I went to the Halo 30, billet case, pretty much the toughest one they make.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I haven't broke it since.
Wow.
I've had one problem. I had some pins when he first built it.
Mm-hmm.
He had little push pins that drop in.
Mm-hmm.
He had a little design flaw in them where they weren't. They call it a halo ring, where they would slide out of the halo ring.
Mm-hmm.
And I had that happen once, in which I called him. He told me what it was, and he goes, "Just tack weld them pins in, and it'd be fine." He goes, "I already fixed it on the new models." So he's already took care of the problem. So I just tacked them in, and then everything went back to work. And
that's
amazing. I haven't been out of it.
So I'll tell you, one of the main reasons I was so excited to talk to you was you're one of the very few people who run a Can-Am in the series, and really who run a Can-Am in the South, in my opinion. But I think it was this last fall, went out and I sold my buggy, and I had a Razor buggy, and I was like, I want a Can-Am, but I had the front locker issue, that's just out there. And so I ended up getting another Razor, but after hearing just that there is a solution that does make it, fixable, and make it not only fixable, but it seems like it makes it not a weakness anymore. That's huge, because I think myself, along with many other people, I like the Can-Am more than Razor on a lot of different numbers, but the consistency and the durability of the Razor, is the reason I went back to one. So after hearing that, my next one might be an X3, because they are some awesome machines for sure.
They do extremely well, and I think a lot of people would be surprised. Like, so in 2017, I bought my first Can-Am at the very end of the season. I actually took it to our championship race, and I raced it there.
Mm-hmm.
Bone stock. Redid the cage on it, was it, and took the bed off and took the fenders off just because I didn't want to break them. I mean, the bike literally had 10 miles on it.
Yeah.
And went and raced it bone stock like that and won our championship there, won them two races, and ended up finishing fourth in the points that year. Man. And then I stripped it down and built my first single seat that winter, and then I had them diff problems going into the 2018 season. And once I fixed the diff problems, well, then it ended up being fine. Well, of course, then I broke a drive shaft. Drive shafts, you just re-sleeve them. Mm-hmm. For me, it's not a big deal. I do a lot of it myself.
Yeah.
And then I ended up getting with RCB and doing a carbon fiber drive shaft in them.
Woo!
Because the carbon fiber takes some of the shock load out of the transmission on them. Is why I run them. If you're like an average rider running around, if you want an extra safety in their cushion, I definitely suggest them. But if you're never going to be hard, if you get the Halo locker and you're never going to be completely abusive on it, you could probably go with something a little cheaper. Like they run a all steel drive shaft they make for them. The stock ones, you definitely mangle them. They're made out of real thin material, and as soon as you get a diff that holds up, you break the stock drive shaft.
That's good to know. So that's good to know, and that's a common theme that I try to reiterate to people is, everyone tells you as soon as you buy a vehicle, well, upgrade the axles, upgrade this, upgrade that, and ultimately you end up just pushing the brakes somewhere else. And you have to, if you're going to fix one thing and make one thing stronger, you need to expect to build the rest of the drive line completely bulletproof as well. So
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then that's the thing, and you might find I don't know. I mean, I found with the carbon fiber setup, it really, I probably can put my foot in my mouth, but I really haven't had any major issues since I've done that. It's been pretty, the carbon fiber, it twists a lot, and a lot of people are afraid of it because it twists. But the benefit to that is shock load's what kills parts.
Right.
It ain't the torque or the stress or running 32s. It's whenever you come down and you shock all them parts, and you come down in the throttle and it sends a shock load through the bike. You got to have something that'll take that out. And if you could get it to come out in the axle, you could have some kind of axle shaft that would do twist and take that shock load out. You wouldn't have to build the drive shaft. You wouldn't have to beef up the transmission,
Yeah.
But that obviously part doesn't exist.
Well, actually, I don't know if you keep up with them. Super ATV just recently released their, I believe it's an XM 300 axle, and I think it's supposed to. I'm just going off their marketing here. I think it'll do 3 complete turns before it snaps.
Wow.
That is a brand new product. I believe it came out last week. This podcast should air, I think, next Monday, something like that, somewhere around there. So, it should be pretty timely after. But I saw something on Facebook or Instagram or something yesterday, and Super ATV had done some R&D for the shaft, and this thing looked like it had been twisted 6 or 7 times. And by that point, it was bent and everything. Wasn't broken yet. But the shaft itself was, it was so twisted that it was probably had a 25, 30 degree bend in it.
Wow. That'll be, I haven't even heard of it or seen it or nothing. This is the first I've heard of that.
Yeah, let me see if I can, I got my computer here. Pull it up, just see. It is the X300 axle. So
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, Super ATV X300. It's like I said, it came out I think a couple weeks ago. I think people are just now getting their hands on it. Let me read while I've got it here, sitting up here. It says more strength. It's a torque load. Blah blah blah. The 300 millimeter shaft twists until the load is gone, and then it returns to the original position. So that's a pretty bold claim, and it comes with a 3-year warranty on it.
Oh wow! So they're pretty confident sounding.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It'll be interesting to see what it does.
Absolutely. And I will say, I actually have seen one in person before, and they're the podcast isn't sponsored by anybody. I know some of the drivers are sponsored, but they're about as thick as the RCV. Obviously, it's going to be a different material in the shaft, but I had an RCV right next to it, and it's pretty stout. I'll tell you that.
It'll be interesting to see what comes of it.
Yeah.
That's like I said. That's the whole reason I'm running a carbon fiber drive shaft, is to take the shock load out of the transmission, because Razor guys, you can buy a billet transmission. The parts, any part you want for a Razor is available, as far as like billet transmissions, and pretty I guess extravagant parts you can get for them. Where Canadian people, it's kind of like you can find a cryo-treated transmission, but you're talking big money, and then you're still running the stock cases.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard. And it's coming along. Obviously, I can tell from starting last season to going into this season. Clearly, I guess a lot of people can tell by my driving style, I'm a lot more confident in my bike.
Yeah, absolutely.
I a ton more aggressively than I did last year. And it wasn't nothing like I wasn't capable of doing it last year. It was, I had a fear of breaking it, and I did. I broke them diffs, and then once we got that fixed, it was just simple. I finally got the trailing arms on it, and got the A-arms on it, and I kind of built the bike as the season progressed. I didn't, like this year I come out with, I knew what I needed because I learned from last year, and so I come out with a lot of bulletproof parts already on the new chassis ready to roll. So
let's talk about it. The rig you're racing now, and we can kind of circle back to kind of more about what got you into the racing and whatnot, because it looks like you built some full-size rigs as well. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. Okay. Played around with them and back and forth. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll loop back to it, because while we're on the topic of the X3 that you had, and now the tube chassis you had, when you're in that full body X3, I would say that most people that listen to this drive Razors and have probably never even sat in a Can-Am before. But the full body, you sit a little lower. To me, it feels a little bit more stable. What is racing a full body Can-Am like compared to your previous Maverick and now to your buggy?
So this is actually probably going to surprise people. The full body, the only downside to it is you lose a little bit of visibility on the passenger side of the bike. And that's pretty much, and of course, strength in the frame rails and stuff like that. Obviously, when you build a tube chassis, you build all that heavier so you can take multiple rollovers. But as far as racing, really the full body, there's actually points of it that work better than a tube chassis. One is the tree kickers. So when you build a single seat chassis, your tree kickers are real abrupt angle. And so if you watch Windrock, I actually smacked the tree at the back of the bike, and it kicked the bike over and smacked another. It was just horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible run. And what the full body allows you to do is put less of an angle on your tree kickers. And when you go through stuff, and we got in a bad habit of this from kind of endurance racing side of things, is you get the front end through and you just stand on the gas.
Yeah, no.
Your tree kickers don't run at that steep of an angle, so if the bike does step out and hit a tree, it just slides down. It doesn't throw the whole back of the bike around.
Yeah.
It doesn't kick you at all.
Yeah.
And so, and that's one of the benefits to a full body. Another one is you actually sit lower in a full body because you sit on the left side of the drive shaft, and your seat is actually, well, we lower them down as low as we can. You sit them down on the floor of the bike. But one of the downfalls is, the hood. You have a hard, for me, I got used to where the tires were, and it doesn't bother me. But I notice a lot of people don't like the fact that they can't see over the hood and see the tires of the bike. And so, that does definitely hinder you on the ones I notice are right-hand corners, downhill. You can't see anything. You're blind.
Yeah.
You have to walk the course, and you have to find spots like on a tree or something to kind of mark in your mind, okay, this is where I got to be when I turn here.
Yeah.
Because you can't see nothing. You can't see downhill and to the passenger side.
Now, that's the main thing. When I got in a Can-Am, got a chance to drive it around, that's the exact thing that kind of steered me away between the front locker and the fact that I couldn't see. Now, how tall are you?
I'm 6'3".
Okay, all right, so you're a giant.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm 5'9", about 5'10" on a good, well, I take it back. I'm 5'11" on a good day, somewhere in that mix. I couldn't see anything, and that was a big thing that I took into account. Now, obviously, you being a little bit taller, but, you lower the seats, you kind of run into that same issue. Now, is there anything that you can do to fix that blind spot? Is there anything at all that's fixable about that? Can you chop the body at all? Can you do this or that?
So, in the woods racing, there's some guys that build some pretty high-end bikes, and they'll lower the dash, the hood and the dash. They'll lower them down, they claim 2 inches.
Yeah.
But that really doesn't fix the problem. It may help the problem, but it's not, by no means do I think it's going to fix the problem, or I really don't know if you're gaining that much by it, to be honest, because I tended to find out once you run around in them long enough, and especially for maybe not for the rock crawling world, but for the higher end, high speed stuff, you're looking so far in front of you if you're truly running that fast that it doesn't hinder you.
Absolutely.
If you're looking, if you're looking at the end of the hood, you better be doing 5 mile an hour. Or so, you ain't going to be 40, 50 mile an hour and looking at the end of the hood, because then you have no idea coming.
Yeah.
So, depending on what you're doing, if you're doing rock crawling, I've done it and I've learned where the bike is, so I just know from, repetitive memory, I guess, from doing it repetitively, that I can, and I'm really good about looking where I'm going and remembering, okay, there's a big boulder on the passenger side I want to hit with that tire. And when it hits, I know what it is. Okay, I'm on that boulder. That means I'm in the right track I want to be in.
Yeah.
And I can just play that through my mind as I'm driving. I'm sorry, one second.
No, you're fine.
In her crib.
Sorry. No, trust me, you're fine. I'm waiting for my 5-year-old to bust through the door and start yelling at me.
But no, so but the hood is definitely one of the things. I don't know if there's any fix for it. Nothing that I know of is there a fix for it. It's one of the, I guess, downfalls, so to speak, to it. But I think that's kind of any full body you get in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have that, and that's where the single seat chassis comes into play. Is the single seat one. Really, I don't want to say you're really changing the center of gravity on a Can-Am that much,
really?
Because not a whole lot. I did some pretty extravagant things on my new chassis to help with that, but my old chassis, it's about the same center of gravity, but you gain visibility, and I did a few things to suspension to help it, with changing the geometry in the front end to help hit ledges and stuff.
Yeah.
Which, help it tremendously, but as far as the center of gravity and all that, it's really not too far off from a stock Can-Am, just because they have everything tucked down pretty much as low as it can go. And the only thing that's really above, the shock towers is plastic and, not really any weight
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that's to me, that's a knock on the Razor, a big time knock, because coming from a buggy back to a full body. I mean, when I was in the buggy, I felt like I was in a Formula One car, and I was 2 inches off the ground. But coming back to the full body, I might as well be riding in a mud truck on 54s or something crazy. It's an insane difference. So it's pretty interesting to me to hear that you do get that similar feel of stability, and like, again, that's one of the big things I always hear about the Can-Ams is the stability is vastly improved.
Yeah, it's definitely on point. I mean, they did that right for sure. And the only downfall I really see to like a stock frame is the frame itself is so thin.
Right.
But I mean, I'm sure they do that. I don't know why. I guess weight savings, or you got to have crush points. When people wreck them.
Yeah, that's very true.
Safe, and when we build the tube chassis, you kind of take all that out of it. So you're also, as much as you're helping the. Bud. Hang on a second.
No, you're totally fine.
You all right, bud? You okay? What's wrong with you? You had a bad dream.
That's all right. And one of the things too that I actually talked about in the Dan Carter podcast is the stock cages and stock frames they're designed to break in a certain fashion where it will save your life. And that's something that I've seen over and over again. And when the Turbo S came out for the Razors, it was like the first week it came out, someone took it to the dunes and blasted Facebook because their cage cracked, at a certain point. And what people don't understand is those are specifically engineered to not be tumbled down a mountain and then be fine to go. They're engineered to hit something, break in the right spot where you won't die, and then you go out and you get another cage. And it's built to save your life, not to tumble down a hill. And that just puts so much emphasis on aftermarket cages. If you know you're going to find yourself tumbling down the hill, aftermarket cages are huge. And especially I've seen the frame stiffeners for the Can-Am, things like that to help with that. But having something to save your life versus having something that's built to go tumbling down a mountain over and over again are two very different things.
Oh yeah, most definitely, and and it goes back to actually a crazy story. A lot of people don't know this. My brother, we got an 800 Razor back when they first came out.
Yeah.
He actually endoed it, and this is back when we didn't realize that the cages were not cages.
Yeah.
This is when they first came out, and he actually endoed one and broke his neck in 3 spots.
Oh my gosh.
And endoed it over a tabletop. If we were hitting like an 85-foot tabletop, so it really probably wasn't the smartest idea.
Man, that's wild.
Yeah, he ended up coming down the front end on the bike and broke his neck, and we ended up cutting the cage off, and we're like, oh, this is not a cage. We realized we got to get him out, and we realized that it wasn't a cage, and he ended up being fine, obviously, after quite a few months of pain, but he's fine now.
Good. Good. Well, it's good to hear you made a good recovery.
Yeah, and so we still race, and he still races, so apparently we didn't learn too much.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things I tell people all the time. There are some people that are just built to race and that just want to race so bad. I go riding with a bunch of guys who do the Southern Rock Racing and the Pro Rock Series all the time, and man, some of the hills these guys hit just for fun with nothing on the line but just an enjoyable Sunday afternoon in the woods. Mind blowing. Absolutely, they're insane. So, it sounds like you guys fall in that camp.
Yeah, definitely, and it's one of them things like I don't know. I mean, some people we do drugs or whatever. Yeah. I guess, and this is our high.
Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely agree that you got to get your rush from something, and if it's racing, it's better than it's better than drugs.
Yeah, and that's kind of where that's kind of what we've always done is that, and then and so back to the stock cage thing.
Mm-hmm.
So like even on like my trail bike, it has a stock cage on it, but like I'll go through and I'll put 120 wall DOM stiffeners in the cage and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason why I keep the stock cages is because I like the idea of being able to buy windshield for it doors.
Yeah.
Not you do aftermarket, then you're kind of custom fitting your windshield on the bike. And,
you're trying to just make something work that wasn't never designed to work that way.
Yeah, and so I found out if I go through and put stiffeners in and do different things, you know, and add to the cage that's already there,
Yeah.
you know, it tends to work good. Now I don't want to go out and hit bounty hills with that, though.
Right.
You know, you got to have some common sense in there too.
Yeah, that's surprising how lacking that is too in some people as well.
Definitely.
So let's talk about you had your X3. I kind of want to just go through a list. You know, you had the stock X3. Was there any major upgrade that you made that you felt like really makes a huge difference on the stock machine?
Just the locker in the front end.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, like, well, I've never broke a rear axle shaft, a stock rear axle shaft.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
I know guys that have, but
Yeah.
I've personally never done it on any of my bikes. I go ahead and run RCVs because I've seen people break them,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm just trying to, you know, that's one thing I want to limit out of the way.
Yeah, be
But,
preemptive.
in my factory bike, I have never done it. Now, front ones, you break them like they're going out of style.
Nice.
Until you get the Halo 30, and then you kind of take care of that problem.
Gotcha.
But the Halo 30 is the big thing. And like, I would say the other thing is your lower A-arms in the front,
Mm-hmm.
on the especially on the 72-inch wide models.
Mm-hmm.
They're like stamped sheet metal
Yeah.
that's welded together.
Yeah.
And they tend to fold up pretty easy. So, I mean, getting definitely some lower A-arms. The trailing arms in the back, you know, once you beat on them long enough, of course, they're going to get bent.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to something aftermarket. But the big thing is really the locker. That is like the number one thing I would say to do, hands down, is put that locker in. Now, if you're going to go racing and progress a little farther into
Mm-hmm.
it, I really try not to do a lot of extra stuff to my race bikes that I
Yeah.
don't. If I think I need it, I don't do it.
Yeah, I think that's very wise.
So, like, just to give you a quick rundown, and we do this. I try to do this. Do little video segments on my Facebook of why I run what product and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Because there's a reason why I run everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just put parts on my bike because somebody sends me parts. I'm not into that. That's not what I do.
Mm-hmm.
But like I run radius rods, you know, I run suspension components all the way around, which we're really violent on and stuff. So,
Is there a brand that you recommend for radius rods, all the suspension components, things like that?
Suspension components, I run HCR.
Classy.
We put that set on, which is Chrissy's bike now, last year,
Mm-hmm.
and they went all the way through me. I raced the whole season, won a championship on them, and they're the exact same set that's on there now.
That's amazing.
I haven't touched, and this has been through trail rides. There's a little hype video out that we went and beat on that bike.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I beat it down for a full day. I think we went through by like 5 or 6 belts on it, just because we kept just running repetitively.
Yeah.
And because I got a pretty wicked tune in both of them bikes, they're pretty nasty.
Who does your tune?
We go through Evolution Power Sports. We actually put them on E85, and we run bigger injectors in them.
Yeah.
And so Christie's bike's probably around 260 horse.
Oh,
and
man.
Mine's pushing probably 280.
Woo! That's a ton, man.
So, they'll get down pretty hard. I mean, and that goes to say though, you know, if you watch this race like Texas,
Mm-hmm.
Power did you no good at the first race.
Yeah,
If you
absolutely.
Monster Power, it didn't help you. You know, Wind Rock, it did help. I would say in the mud to clean out the tires and stuff. Power definitely helped you there. But there's multiple races that big power doesn't help you. I mean, it is nice to have when you need it.
Mm-hmm.
But if a guy's coming up to race, that's not something he has to have.
Yeah.
It's definitely cool to have, though. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I'm sure. That's a ton. That's a ton of power. That's
So,
crazy.
but then other than that, let's see what I do. I change the power steerings in the bike. I go to e-power steering, gives you a little more power with that locker locked in.
Mm-hmm.
Just so that way I know it's going to steer when I'm doing something I shouldn't be.
There you go.
Other than that, let's see here. And then we did, Gary Hinkle did my shocks on my bike, which going into last season, going into championship race, A bunch of people seen me go down, was it a Fable Hill or whatever? And I kind of jumped off the top of it and landed about halfway down the hill.
Yeah, I remember watching that, trying to figure out, first off, what was going through your mind, and then second, how you survived, because it looked like, it didn't look too bad, you know?
It was smooth, other than the back of the bike took a real hard hit about halfway down. I thought I knocked the transmission out of the back of the bike.
Lord.
But it took it fine. But that's the very first time I put Gary shocks on my bike. I ran stock shocks all year, stock springs. But, I mean, didn't do anything to them, just for the simple fact of breaking diffs and just had other problems that the suspension wasn't, on the top of the list. It didn't make it to the top of the list. And then as I got the bike, all the bugs worked out, and I figured out, okay, if you got a Can-Am, these are the list of things you need to do to make them bulletproof.
Yeah.
And once I figured that out, well, then it came, okay, now I got time to actually tune the suspension, and I was like, this suspension's horrible. And, and so I actually talked to Gary and stuff, and he does a bunch of endurance racing, and that's kind of how I got hooked up with him, and I told him what I did and stuff, and then we're actually shocks off one of my brother's bike that Gary did for his endurance racing. He goes, put them on and see if you like them. Well, this is like a day before we went to Dyersburg to run the championship. And I put them on. I was like, these shocks are awesome.
Really?
And he's like, and he's like, well, put the back ones on. And I go, well, you can't put the back ones on because XRS and the XDS, the narrow version and wide version, are two different rear shocks. The front shocks are close enough that you don't really notice anything, but the rear shocks are completely different. So I couldn't run the rear shocks.
Are they longer, or are they just a completely different setup?
So they're a different size.
Okay.
One, and then the other thing is the piggyback reservoirs on the narrow bikes. So if you have a stock chassis, you can change them out because the way the mounts are for the top of the shocks, you can change them. But the other downfall is where they mount the trailing arm. The trailing arms on the XDSs you mount on top of the trailing arm, and the XRSs you mount like kind of down in the trailing arm more. Yeah. And so the mounts are different. And so that's one problem. Then when I built my chassis, I built them for the bigger shocks, which have reservoir like hoses. Yeah. Because the reservoirs aren't attached, they're not piggyback. And so I built the mount a little beefier. Well, with the reservoirs, I can't fit them in there with where the mount is. Yeah. So I just ended up running the stock ones on the back, and Gary does some pretty neat stuff. And like when I jumped off of there, the front shocks, he puts bottom out systems actually in all the way around. He does all the shocks. And so the last 2 inches of the stroke, it's like having basically a bump stop, like on a big buggy. Yeah. In the bottom of the shock, they're all built internally. And so when I jumped off there, I obviously didn't have that in the back, and it just blew through the travel. It smacked so hard. I literally thought I broke the transmission in the back. I was like, something had to break. Like, it was just abusive on the back. The front, it was like on a cloud. It landed so smooth, and it rolled right down through there. And,
that's amazing.
It was pretty neat. And, like, I knew going into that race, me and Tim were, I think, 18 points apart, and I really didn't think I had a chance at catching him. And I had a pretty big gap between me and the guy behind me in points. And so I was like, well, I can race to win, not race for points. Well, then I ended up winning the first day, and he got like 5th or 6th. And it kind of put us closer in points. And I was like, well, that means if I win again today, and he has to finish like 4th or better, or I beat him. And well, it just ended up working out where I was the very last person to race. Oh. And so it come down, and he actually come up, and I followed the points closely, but he goes home and adds them up every night. Yeah. And so like he come up to me that next day, and he's like, I got to finish here if you get first. And I'm like, really? I didn't realize he had to finish like 4th. I think it was. But he knew exactly where he had to finish. And so he went out, and he was pushing real hard, and I think he either did a wide open landing, like he jumped that ledge. He landed on the brakes. He had the brakes locked up, and I think he had an issue with his front brakes, and when it landed, the front tire rolled and the rear brakes were locked solid, and it jerked the diff apart in the front of the bike. Oh. And it ended up breaking his front diff, and he ran the rest of the course with the broken bike, which credit to him because he did a really good job forcing that thing through the rest of the course, but that's the down. Yeah, that's the one of the things. Do you push? How hard do you push? And do you risk breaking your bike? In which he was being real aggressive, jumping into that because nobody jumped into there. Him and Brandon, I think, were the only ones that jumped into that hill.
Yeah.
And it was mainly because of that point. There was a huge risk.
Yeah.
It was a risk and reward there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew when I got up to the line, I knew I had to, in my mind, it was either wreck or get first. There's not going to be an in-between. And so I just went for it. And we come off Fable Hill and jumped down it. And it actually went way better than I ever thought it would when I turned the corner.
So, go ahead. Let's finish.
And so it all worked out, and we ended up taking home a championship.
So I got a couple things I want to say there. First off, when you come off Fable Hill, how soon after you crossing the finish line did you know that you had won?
So I pulled across the line. I turned around. The guy with running the handheld clock unit was right there. And so I looked at him, and I was like, where am I at? 'Cause I knew if I got first, I won.
Right.
And so I'm sitting there, and I'm waiting, and I think he holler or somebody come up to me as a video of it, and they knew that I got first, and they ended up telling me, and the clock guy was right there, and he's like, yeah, you got first. And so I knew right then that I won the championship.
How did you feel? What'd you do?
I was shocked, to be honest. I wasn't shocked that I won the race. I was just shocked that I won a championship.
Yeah. So, how many drivers are in the entire series? I mean, there's, is it a ballpark of 50?
Yeah. So there's a bunch of drivers, especially the ones that run it, I'd say religiously. So a lot of guys start the series, and if they have a wreck, a DNF or whatever, then they're like, well, I'm out of the points chase, so they kind of don't run. They'll run the close races, but not all the races.
Right.
Because they'll go try to hit up other series and stuff and chase points. Right. But there's, I don't know, probably 50-something racers that race at different times. There's normally, I'd say, 30 of us, 25 to 30 of us that are consistent every race, all the time, constantly.
So you beat, you sit there, you just get told you're in first place, knowing that you've beat all the guys out there, you're the top. What goes through your mind? What'd you do next when you pulled off to your camp and you jump out? What are you doing?
Well, to be honest, it was short-lived. I was real happy. And Christy, so we were actually, her due date was that same day.
Oh my God.
So literally, I come down, I got the bike ready, I went, called her, made sure, because she was at home, made sure she was okay, made sure, nothing was going on. And then went down, and she was feeling a little queasy and stuff, and I was like, oh, okay. And this is our first baby, so I don't know we don't really know what to expect. We're guessing at all this stuff. And so, so I go race and all that, and so I come back, and they're doing these little quick interviews, and people are talking to me, and the whole time I'm like, I need to go get to my phone. Yeah. I got to go get to my phone, because I've been down here for, at that point, it's almost an hour and a half, 2 hours watching other people run. Right. Getting all that stuff. And so I'm like, I got to go get to my phone. I got to go check,
Yeah.
Because it's a 4-hour drive back to the hospital, and I'm like, so I may have to, take off. Yeah. So I end up getting to my phone. Everything's fine. So then it kind of set in a little bit, and Christy actually surprised me. She drove down there.
Oh, my gosh.
The next day. It was Sunday, because we have a big banquet and all that, which is really awesome. It's one of my favorite parts of the year is doing the banquet. Yeah. Getting to, you get to relax, you get to talk to everybody and all that. So it's really cool. And they go through and they do different accomplishments and stuff. People, highlights of the season and different things. And I don't know if you've ever been to it, but it's really cool to see. And so we went. She actually drove down and we did that. And then so that was Sunday. And then it kind of set in Sunday, what occurred. I was happy as can be. And then Monday we went home Sunday night, and we went to the hospital Sunday night.
Oh, man.
No, it was Monday. I can't remember now. It might have been Monday night.
Yeah.
I think it was Monday night. We went to the hospital Monday night, and we had a baby. So
man, that's...
everything was really compact right there, and it really didn't have time to settle in all the way.
Man. So you got your championship prize was your baby. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So it was really hectic, and it was awesome though. It was probably one of my favorite weekends ever.
Yeah, I would probably have to argue that you winning the championship and then a couple days later having your first kid, that's got to be that's definitely one for the books. I'll say it like that.
Yeah.
So that's amazing though. So it finally sets in that you have won everything, and it's the off season. What did you do the off season after you won the championship to get ready for the next year? Because obviously you want to repeat the exact same scenario. What did you do? Was there adjustments you wanted to make? I think you built a whole new buggy, correct?
Yeah, I built a whole new buggy. So actually, in the middle of the season, I don't know if you remember, Tim Cameron had a Can-Am for one race.
Yeah, I do. That's actually something that I wanted to ask you about as well.
He actually he wrecked that bike playing around his house. He hit a tree pretty hard and mangled the radiator and some other stuff on it. And he put it up for sale. I ended up buying that bike.
Yeah.
And that's actually my new race bike this year.
That's amazing.
It's an old bike. So I bought it from him and fixed some stuff on it. Ran an endurance race, had a pretty bad wreck, and then pretty much totaled the bike out when I wrecked it. So then I stripped it down in the off season and built a tube chassis out of it.
Okay.
And built a whole new chassis for this year. Obviously, took all the parts and stuff that I learned worked last year and brought them over to the new chassis. Like HCR, like I said, they're tough, and they come on board, and I actually got a really good relationship with them. My original set, I actually paid outright everything.
Yeah.
I bought all them outright, no sponsorship, no help, and I had good luck with them. So I called and talked to them, and they said, well, you won a championship and you represent us, and they're real big on the West Coast, not on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And so they go, well, we want you to represent us and show our product off, and so, we want to work with you. And they worked a deal with me and stuff and got me suspension on the new bike too.
That's amazing.
That was pretty awesome. And then I brought over, Evolution Power Sports, Halo, RCB, pretty much all the products I ran last year. They stayed on board with me. Pitbull tires, brought all of them over with me and put them on the new bike. Built a new chassis. I did some, I guess I call it trick stuff to the frame, but it's really not that special. It's just different. So once you build your first bike, you can always look back and be like, because my first one I built purely for function. It had nothing to do with, I didn't put no style into it. I didn't do nothing. It was built, this is what I want to do. This is the purpose. This is 100% function. If it doesn't have to do with function, I'm not messing with it.
Right.
And so then with the new one, I was able to, I knew what I needed. I knew what all the stuff I wanted to do as far as function goes. And I'm like, well, now I can actually put a little style to it because I know everything I did works.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
The new one I put a little more style into. I think it looks a little better. I like it more than the first one.
Yeah, no, it's really sharp. The front end on it is just killer. It looks really, really good. It definitely looks like you've got a little bit more room in there too. It looks like it's a little bit more comfortable than the first one was.
Actually, the first one was more roomy and more comfortable than the new one. The new one is actually the cage. So what I did is I ran the drive shaft. I built basically a tunnel through the center of the chassis, so the drive shaft will run a little lower in it, and so I could slide the seat down. Because me being 6'3", I noticed I go race against these guys, and my bike's like a foot taller than everybody's, and I'm like, this is not right. and because everybody else, like Tim's like 5 foot tall. No, not really. But no, I think he's like 5'5" or something. He's pretty short.
Yeah.
And so his buggies are built to his height.
Right.
He builds up, where they're close to him, and they're literally like, there's no way I could ever fit in it.
Yeah.
Tim's buggy. And his bikes are literally like, 6 to 8 inches shorter than all of mine.
Yeah.
And that's all, weight that's above, center of gravity. You're bringing it up every time, and it's just little amounts, but it makes a difference. Like our first 2 races, so whenever me and him have good runs, our times for these for Texas and Windrock have been a half a second apart, one run, and 3/4 of a second another run. So we're racing within a second of each other.
That's crazy.
Consistently.
Yeah.
And it's not like we just go out and do that once.
Yeah.
Me and do that on a regular basis, you know. And so every little advantage you can get does make a difference in, you know, when you're racing that close, you know. And so I did, like, I put the drive, and I actually lowered the seat down, and I rolled it back a little bit and lowered it down so I could pull the roof down. And to me, it's more comfortable in the new chassis.
Okay.
I've had other people sit in it, like Travis Skelton sat in it. He's like, and he's shorter than me, but he sits in it, and he's like, how in the heck you drive this thing? You're laid back. And I'm like, for me, it feels great. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. See,
some people probably don't like it, but I personally think it's more I personally think it fits me better.
Yeah.
Because I sit down in it and everything's tighter. But as far as room and like comfortability, the old bike, I had more room in it. Just because the height wise, and then the way you sat in it and stuff, you had more leg room in it. Had more room to move my feet around. So it was actually, I would almost say, I want to say it's more comfortable, but it was more roomy in the old bike than the new bike.
So something I want to bring up too is your girlfriend Christy, correct?
Yes.
Okay. She actually races too. She raced at Windrock, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm looking at a picture of her in your old chassis, and you can tell that it was designed for someone a little taller.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I'm assuming, how tall is she?
She's probably 5'6".
Okay, so she's closer to the average person, and you can definitely tell she's sitting down in there pretty good. So I would imagine that, you know, someone being as tall as you are would definitely reap the benefit of sitting that a little bit lower back and a little bit more sunk down into the seat. So that's pretty amazing. But something else I wanted to bring up is she does race. How did you get her, you know, has she always gone trail riding with you? How'd you get her to the point where she now feels comfortable and has a desire to go, you know, race those monster hills?
So the monster hills are still, so like Windrock, if you ever been there, that hill it's intimidating looking at it.
That hill, I saw it when they did the first Race to Riches there, and it actually, you go up, and if you look at it from the left or right, like standing beside it, it actually curved backwards at the very top, and it's actually like kind of concaved in. I haven't seen the new hills that you guys race on, but I can tell you if it's anywhere close to the old ones, you guys are nuts. You guys are crazy because they are very, very, very intimidating.
Yeah, and like the thing for me is like most hills don't bother me too much. They're not a big deal. That hill there that we race on, I don't know why, but it's one of the few hills. Actually, we did the Race to Riches qualifier there, and this is probably where a lot of that comes from. So I'm sitting there, and there's like 60-something guys at the Race to Riches qualifier, and we're sitting there running, and Tim runs first, and we had to run that section with the stumps in it.
Yeah.
And it goes up the left side where everybody's talking about going, that left side, that's where you want to go. So Tim takes off and goes up it, and then somebody else goes, like a couple guys make it up that left side fairly decent. Well, then somebody got stuck up there, and they ate out in front of the stumps. Well, from the bottom of the hill, you couldn't see that.
Yeah.
So unless you were standing up there where you could look at it, you couldn't tell that was 8 out. Nobody realized it down at the bottom, you know? And so guys are going up, and then guys just start flipping off the hill.
Yeah, I mean that's brutal. There's videos everywhere of that. That hill got nasty for the side-by-side drivers. And then ultimately, I talked to James Cantrell, who took his full-size bouncer up there, and he took a super nasty spill on that hill. And that, to me, is one of the... It's very rare you find a hill where it seems like everybody has an issue. So that hill is just something wild.
It is. And that's one of the few hills. So I sat there and I watched, I don't know how many guys flip off that hill and totaled their bikes out. And I'm sitting in my bike and I'm like, I don't know about this. Like, you know, I'm like, this is, and that's the only time I've ever had a hill get to me, I guess.
Yeah.
And it was probably more like this year we went there and we raced the hill right next to it, and I was like, and I didn't have an issue, I was fine. But like I guess I was sitting there watching, and I watched guys that are good, like Travis Skelton, you know, Brandon, guys that are dang good drivers come off that hill, you know, and I'm like, okay, you know, this ain't like it's, you know, Joe Schmo flipping down it. These are some, you know, guys that race every weekend and they're good. And so that's the only time I had a hill actually get to me a little bit. And I think it was more watching people come off, because I had to run a course like out of 60 people, I was like 55.
Yeah.
And so I watched all these guys flip off this hill, and I'm like, all right, we got to climb it because I want to run this race. So we're going to the top. And I actually got up in the top of it and got hung up, and I got lucky. My bike actually just powered out of it.
Yeah.
Got hung up there, got hemmed up, and I thought about backing down, but I watched a couple people that back down and they'd catch a stump on the way down, and then it just go, you go cartwheeling.
Yeah.
And you would end up, and the bad part is that hill, you wouldn't flip over once or twice. You'd roll like 10 times.
Yeah, that's the thing I noticed about it is there's a video of the full body Can-Am. I'm not sure who drives it, but someone took their full body up it, and they did 5 or 6 just nose in the air straight backwards, 5 or 6 the whole way down. And man, just as someone who I've never experienced a roll like that looks violent, and it looks like it doesn't feel good, and it's just, again, nothing on the machine, but gosh, man, I would just hate that.
Oh, I don't care what anybody says. They can, like Travis Skelton, I'm real good friends with him. Me and him are real close, which I got some funny stories about that.
Sure, feel free to share.
Racing together, but after that wreck, he rolled down it, and Travis is a tough dude. He ain't no joke, and he just held thumbs up, and we ran over and looked at him, and I could tell he was knocked out, he was not. He was he was in and out of consciousness. You could tell he had a concussion because he just told everybody he's okay, but I was like, no, you're hurt, dude. You're not 100% okay right now.
Yeah, man, that's that, and I'll tell you, watching, because Travis has been racing for a while, and he definitely is right up there with you, and he's, to see a guy like him come back and just be not in good shape, I feel like there's a certain art to, once you've had a few tumbles, you kind of know what to expect, but to see a guy as experienced as he is in that kind of state, I'm sure that's probably what shook you up.
Yeah, and so we ended up, we made it out the top of the hill or whatever. It wasn't the prettiest hill climb I ever made. Definitely not. But I made it, and whatever. But a real side note about me and Travis, so we raced together in 2017. Me and him's kind of first year racing. And I had a naturally aspirated bike, and he had an old wore-out chassis turbo. Yeah. We both had, I'm going to say, junk bikes. There was nothing, we didn't have anything comparable to what we have now.
Right.
And me and him, at the end of 2017, we became friends because we'd always, we were always trying to catch Tim and Brandon and all these guys fast, And so me and him would always hang out and talk and help each other, whatever we could do. And we ended up making a little pact at the end of 2017. We said in 2018, because we both knew we were building new bikes, we said we're going to come and we're going to give them a run for their money. They're not just going to walk away from the championship. And it just so happened to work out. He won the Bounty Hill Championship, and I won the UTV Championship.
Man.
So it ended up just being kind of a cool little thing that we were able to pull off there.
Yeah. Man, so first off, that's amazing because, I think for a long time in the sport, I would say 2017 and before, it really did seem like you had the top 5. You had 5 guys who were just consistently at the top, and they just knew what they were doing because they'd done it longer. But to see people come in the sport and just flat out be like, I'm going to be at the top, we're going to push them, and we're going to make the sport better. Because ultimately, more competition makes everybody push harder, it furthers the industry for better parts, it's just so much better. So, hearing that you were just a couple of guys who were like, we're going to give them a run for their money, that's huge. And if everybody had that mentality of coming out and making sure that they're going to be in the talk, in the competition, the sport would change, tenfold. Oh, yeah.
Definitely, and a lot of it is, like I said, now, you need a lot of, it's getting tighter and it's getting more competitive. Like I said, we're finishing within half a second, 3/4 of a second. You're talking very little time in between bikes.
Yeah,
and it's extremely tight. And but I still think there's room there for the average guy to come out, and maybe not in your brand new full body, unless you really don't care about it.
Yeah.
But to come out and you can come out in a full body, and there's certain races that we run where a full body does just fine.
Yeah.
Windrock, that one, there's a guy actually on the first run, I think he finished third in his full body. Third or fourth on the first run in his full body. I don't know what he did on the second run. Honestly, I didn't. I was trying to fix stuff, so I didn't catch what he did. But I noticed he did really good in his first run.
Yeah.
And, so there's still a spot there for the guys that run them, but you have to be controlled. When you get in a full body, when you're in a full body and and you don't have a bulletproof diff and you don't have all these crazy parts, you you may not finish first, but you can run top 5 or definitely top 10 if you know your machine and you know your bike and you know what you have, and you don't push it. If you come there and maybe be a little bit conservative, because the thing is guys like me and Tim, when we make a mistake, it's normally like I made a mistake at Windrock. I ripped the rear shock off my bike. I ripped one apart, running all spring in the back. When I hit that tree, it actually jerked the shock internally apart. Well, then after that, I just forced the bike through the rest of the run. It was just dangerous. And so, there's guys like that, and like Tim in Texas on his second run had a horrible error, and he ended up, 20 seconds behind. So there's guys that come out in a full body, and if they run and they know their machine and they can be consistent, and not just go out and destroy it, they can finish in the top 5,
Yeah.
Because when guys like me, Travis, Brandon, we make mistakes, normally we're running so fast, when we make a mistake, it's a bad mistake.
Yeah.
And it takes a while to correct it.
Yeah, no, I agree and I understand. So that being said, what are the leagues and series that you race in this year, 2019?
So 2019 I run SRS. That's the biggest one.
Right.
I'm trying to hit some of the Pro Rock stuff up. It's kind of hard with the new baby. So
yeah. I completely get that.
It's really, maybe when it gets a little warmer out and we can take her with us, because, I don't know, some people know I got a school bus that I redid into an RV.
Which is amazing.
Thank you. So it just depends on her. So, we're definitely dedicated to the SRS. I really like the Pro Rock. I like Joey. I like Trip. I have a good time with all them guys, too. And their stuff's a little more Bounty Hill-ish, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so it makes it another level. And actually, my brother went and raced for me at the first Pro Rock, just because simply I just didn't have the time.
Yeah. Between
running our businesses and doing that, my baby, it's just a lot of time, and then trying to work on race bikes.
Yeah.
So, I got just a ton of time. It's pretty chaotic. So I got to kind of pick and choose my battles, of course, where I want to go race, and stuff like that. And, so I let Nathan go race for me at Pro Rock, which he tested the cage out on my bike, which works really good, apparently.
There you go.
But, and he'll probably run a couple more of the Pro Rocks for me. Because he's running all the survival races.
Yeah, so that was actually part of what I was going to ask, too, is, you've got the Pro Rock series, and you've got the new edition of the Endurance series. You had mentioned you did some Endurance series before, is that correct?
Yeah, so I ran some of the survival stuff.
Survival, before. Okay, gotcha.
And, actually I had horrible turnouts, to be honest. And there's a kind of a funny story that goes along with that, too. So, as a family, I got a huge family. I got 16 aunts and uncles on one side of the family.
Man.
And that's just one side, and we're all pretty tight-knit family. And we all ride and race, and that's like the school bus thing comes in as when we were younger.
Yeah.
One of my uncles, he has 2 sons, which are my cousins. They're about the same age as me and my brother, older brother. And we all rode together, four-wheelers and stuff. And so he bought a school bus, had a big door in the back of it, and we'd throw all the four-wheelers in the back of it, go somewhere to ride, unload all the bikes, and throw down sleeping bags and sleep on the floor of the bus.
Dude, that's amazing.
And that's pretty much how we made it work, So we had this old school bus we bought for like $2,000. You used to be able to buy them real cheap.
That is about to say, that's unheard of now.
Yeah, I think now, you can buy them, you can get them for about $6. I think I paid $5 for mine or $6 for mine.
That's amazing still. That's a really good deal.
Yeah, and so we did that, and that's how we did all that stuff. And but anyway, so our trail riding, what everybody considers, going out on a trail ride, is like an endurance race.
Okay.
We go out and if it's us 4, we have to race. There's no. It's so understood that we'll go out like, hey, let's go trail ride, and then you go out, and as soon as you get in the trails, the first guy, he's like the leader. He plays follow the leader.
Yeah.
And the guy you just try to get away from everybody.
That's awesome.
And that's just the way. And we ride that way everywhere. It ain't home. We go to parks. After we see the little scenic routes of the park, then we start doing this. And we've gotten in trouble at several parks because we'll go through trails, and we do it a little more cautiously now that we're older.
Yeah.
But when we're younger, we go, even on pullers, we do this. We go through trails, 40, 50 mile an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Just moving, racing each other, playing, and we get off in the back sections of the park and do that where we're not around everybody.
Yeah.
But people would come up and they'd yell at us, why are you guys riding so fast? And we get a little bit of trouble for it, nothing major. But that was us trail riding, and so we go do endurance races, and you talk to people and they're like, oh man, we're running so fast. And so then naturally in our mind, we're like, oh, we got to go faster than
obviously.
And then I end up doing stuff like I've wrecked out the first 2 endurance races I ever entered. One of them hit a tree, ripped the cage off the bike, myself in the hospital. Man. That was actually at Race to Riches 3.
Oh, God, dude, that's serious.
Yeah, that was a bad one. And a lot of people gave me a hard time because I had a stock cage on the bike, and I had it reinforced with 120 wall. And they're like, oh, if you didn't have a stock cage, that wouldn't have happened. And like afterwards, I did a little video. It actually hit so hard, it didn't just break the cage; it ripped the dash out of the bike, where the cage mounts to.
Yeah.
On the X, it ripped that whole plate and everything out of the frame of the bike. It ripped the B pillars out of the frame of the bike. I mean, it was just crazy. It was like the worst hit you could possibly take. I was on 2 wheels, and I drove the A pillar right into a tree.
Whoa.
And, I didn't hit the front bumper, didn't hurt none of the suspension on the front of the bike, nothing. I mean, it literally just hit the A pillar and then came into the cockpit with me and hit me in the head. But anyways, I might have killed some brain cells. But
I was about to say, it's fine. We just gloss over it.
So that was us, learning that, okay, when we go do these endurance races, we actually need to ride like we're racing our friends in the back.
Yeah.
We don't need to push and go faster. We need to actually just race like we're having fun.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we started out doing this year. And 2 races in, he's won that one and I won the other one. So apparently it's working. We're on to something. It may have to fine tune that recipe a little bit, but we're finding out that, okay, we ain't got to push it quite so hard. We need to back it off, run a good pace. And then when it comes down to the last lap or 2, if you decide somebody's catching you or whatever, go ahead and push a little harder. And so that's kind of where we stand on the endurance racing right now. Is we're learning that we run at that pace, we're doing good, which is still fast. I mean, it ain't no joke.
No, it's not. And so you guys did end up. You said you won the Pro Rock endurance race. Your brother did.
Yeah, he won the Pro Rock endurance race.
Man.
And then I did the Ultra 4 endurance race and won it. So,
which Ultra 4 race did you do?
They had one at Windrock. They had an endurance race at Windrock.
Oh, yeah, of course they did. I totally forgot they even did that. That's amazing. How did it feel to have the Ultra 4 out there with the Rock Racing Series?
It felt really neat. I wish there was a little bit bigger turnout on it. It wasn't a huge turnout, and I'm hoping that at one of them, I haven't really researched it a whole lot. I kind of ran into doing it all, and my brother had an endurance bike, and I was like, well, I'm going to steal your endurance bike, and I'm going to go race.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how it just kind of happened real quick and right there. And but I want to see if they bring like the 4,400 cars and stuff to a race that we race at, because I've never seen the 4,400 cars run in person.
So let me tell you, I don't know if you're gonna make it down, but April 12th and 13th at Adventure Off-Road Park, they actually have a full-blown East Coast Ultra 4 race. I'll be down there doing interviews the entire weekend, so if you wanna meet up, we can do that. But we'll be down there. I know a lot of the guys from out really far west. I talked to a couple of them. They're not coming. It's the guys that are in the Midwest and who race out east. There's going to be a pretty big turnout. And I don't know, have you ever been to Adventure Off-Road Park?
No, I haven't.
So it is, southern wheeling at its best. It's big rocks, tight trails, and the thing that blows my mind, in Ultra 4 they do the 30-second staggered, race start, and they're going to run these full-size 4400 cars 2 wide on some really tight Tennessee trails, and they're going to do 30-second release times. And I'll tell you, Adventure is the park I've been to the most outside of Windrock, and I've
heard it's a brutal park. Like it's
nasty.
You want to go, yeah, it have that wild factor.
So the width factor is where I think that people are going to run into issues because, I've been down those in a Razor, a lot of those main trails, and on the ones where the big, the 4400 cars are probably going to be racing, it's probably wide enough for 2 Razors, 100% not wide enough for 2 full-size rigs, but I can tell you that, from what I've heard about the hammers and things like that, this is nothing like the Ultra 4 guys from the West have ever seen. I can tell you right now. In the Ultra 4 series, there's never been a race like this. In the Southern Rock Racing series, the closest thing that's ever happened is when they did the side-by-side, shootout drag race up the hills together. And the fact that they're going to have tons of drivers out there, this is something I'm trying to stress over and over to people. Come out, watch, for you, race. Go race. I don't know if you can still sign up, but I'm sure you can. Go and be a part of this because this is going to be one of the most brutal East Coast races that has ever been in the Ultra 4. It's going to be nasty, and I'm super excited to go watch because the park itself is about 500 acres. Like I said, it's super tight wheeling. Not a joke as far as the rocks go, and it's going to be nasty, and they're going to have a lot of cars on that course. So it's going to be something, like I said, I've never seen before, and I'm not sure if the Ultra 4 has ever had something like this either. If you can make it down there, man,
that definitely sounds awesome. That sounds like it's going to be a wild time.
That's all I can think about is I'm trying to figure out where they're going to do the loop because the loop they have in the park, it's not like. This isn't necessarily a park that's designed in a loop structure. It's definitely segregated, big black diamond sections over here, and then on the opposite side of the park, there's another black trail section, and they're gonna have to connect it somehow. So it's gonna be crazy. Yeah. Oh, it's gonna be crazy. So like I said, I'm trying to put the word out for them because you definitely don't want to miss it.
I wonder. I'm really interested. Now you make me want to go down there.
Oh, hey, man, I'll tell you if there's
how they compare it, in the rock bouncing. So it sounds to me like that. Like everybody I've heard about that park and talked to, that park's like a rock bouncer park.
It is the rockiest park I've been to in Tennessee. Outside of you ever been to Windrock and rode like 15 and the trails right out of the parking lot at Windrock?
Yeah, I've rode a few of them, yeah.
They're just rough as all get out and big boulders. That's how this park is everywhere. It's just huge, like rock gardens, but the boulders are, the size of a Prius. It's huge. So, I'm serious. If there's some way that I can help you get down here or anything I can do to help you get down here, if I can get you to race, man, I'll do anything I can to do that. I'm trying to get more people in it, and it's going to be, like I said, they've got a little course that they have, like a little short track. I think that they'll probably do some kind of qualifying on. But as far as the actual woods race goes, man, I don't see how it's going to work, honestly.
That's always the best. When you just don't quite know, that's when it really
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, if I can make it happen, let me know.
Yeah, I didn't even really know that much about it. I'm going to have to actually research that and look into it.
Yeah, absolutely. But outside of that, you said you did the Ultra 4 Endurance Series. That's gonna. I think that's gonna continue throughout the race season, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're not gonna hear a lot about it right now because they got a couple races that are completely separate from the SRS.
Mm-hmm.
Then they come back in. They have 3 more races with the SRS.
Okay.
That was kind of the deal. I signed up for because I'll be running like the SRS, and I'm running the Bounty Series because it's nice when they pack them into one weekend. Because then I'm only 1 weekend away from work.
Yeah.
So I can go and I can slam as much racing I can into 1 weekend, and then I can come back home, go back to work.
Yeah.
And so it's hard for me to get away a bunch of weekends in a row.
Yeah, definitely.
Just brutal. So what me and my brother do is we try to work it out where it kind of works out good with me doing the hill killing, him doing the endurance, where I'll run the hill killing stuff, and then he'll go run the endurance stuff, and we kind of stagger our weekends away from work, so one of us can take care of business stuff than the other one. Because we're open 6 days a week. Our both yards. So, like even right now, as we're talking, there's probably I actually live at one of our yards. We got a house right next to it. Like literally, my main office, the yard's 150 feet away.
That's pretty nice.
So like I can look outside right now, and there's probably 15, 20 customers out here right now.
Man.
Doing stuff, which, we try to like to stay, within reason, close by. Anything was to happen, in our yards, whether they need, whatever. And so it works out good doing that. So we kind of work together on what races, and there's races we both go to, definitely. But, gotta kind of work all that stuff in. So
I think that makes your like the Wolff Racing team. I think that makes it a lot more. You're going to get a lot more like popularity and a little more notoriety because you guys are going to be there more often. So I think that's awesome that you guys have kind of worked out that schedule. But
and the other thing is just for anybody listening, it's probably going to end up. So I used to be Wolff Racing, and then I started doing stuff, and a bunch of guys that do Facebook and all that, and they're like, hey, you need to change it to Paul Wolff Racing because I kept getting a bunch of friend requests on my personal page, and all these guys trying to follow me. And I was like, well, I have a page for racing. Like, you guys can go here and check out all the racing stuff. Well, I talked to a bunch of guys, and they're like, well, change your racing to Paul Wolff Racing, and then when people type it in, it'll come up, and they'll be able to find it.
Gotcha.
So I did. I changed it to that, and then now it's like, well, Christy races with me, my brother races. Now, I feel a little, I don't know, I guess conceited or whatever that I have Paul Wolff Racing on the side of everybody's stuff, you know.
Well, it's about branding, just as well as I do. You gotta get that name, and once you got a little following behind it, you got to stick with it. So I'm sure that no one's more hard on yourself than you are. So I wouldn't think too much about it.
So that was the whole like we discussed changing it back to Wolff Racing because it's like me, my brother, that way it's a little more, kind of all of us included because he's a huge part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Christy's a huge part of it. We all work together. We all, work on the bikes together. Literally, there's 4 Can-Ams in the shop right now.
That's crazy, man.
Getting worked on, so, we all do all that stuff together and, keep them going, and we'll swap parts if we have to make sure somebody can make it to a race. It's been stuff like at Windrock, I stole the endurance shocks off of his bike.
Yeah.
I took the shocks off his bike so I could go run my second run.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So, it's definitely. But another thing I was going to hit is I was going to ask you about. I was listening to one of your podcasts. I don't remember which one it was. You guys were talking about like the 72-inch wide bikes versus the 64.
That was something I wanted to bring up too because just to throw a little bit of shade at all the Razor guys. Everyone in the Razor world, when the wider Can-Am came out, said, oh, it'll never fit down a trail, no one wants that, and then all of a sudden the Turbo S comes out and it's the greatest thing ever made. So talk about, because you mentioned that you had both of them. What are the differences? How do you feel about it? What are your thoughts on the wider versus the more narrow, and what seems to do better for you?
So in the racing that I do, this is funny you asked me, like, to come up on this subject. And part of the reason I thought about it is I ripped that shock off.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I would say I struggled there more than Tim and everybody else is they all run 64-inch wide bikes. They could shoot through them same trees I did and have, almost a foot more clearance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or whatever. And so that's one of the benefits of the 64. You go through tree sections like that, but then if you watch the end of that run where I shoot it up the hill and it comes over and lands on its side and it's all out of shape and the bike settles back down and takes off. That's one of the benefits to a 72-inch wide car.
Absolutely.
You got a little more stability there. And like as far as shock travel goes, I actually run on my new race bike. I run the 72-inch wide A-arms, trailing arms, and all that with the 64-inch wide shocks.
Ooh.
And the reason being is your normal 72-inch wide stuff have bypasses built into the shock. And the bypasses, the internal bypasses like that are extremely hard to tune. Because you literally got to pull the whole shock apart, and you got to either weld the hole up or open the hole up. You got to drill it out.
Yeah.
It's really hard. You can't just make a shim stack change, or because the way the puck's designed, you're kind of stuck with it.
Yeah.
And, so it's really hard to make tuning adjustments. And until once you get it dialed in close, you got the fine tune adjustments. But it's really hard to get set in the general direction. And so I wanted to go away from them shocks a little bit and try these XDS shocks out, because they're a lot easier to work with. They don't have the bypasses built into them, and and so we're trying them out, and so far they work just fine.
Good.
But we actually limited some of the travel in the bikes. We don't have as much travel as we had before, which I don't think it hinders you that much. I really don't. I think like on both the Can-Ams and the Razors, some of that travel they have is a little bit, I'm trying to think, it's almost too much.
It's unnecessary.
Yeah, because like the Can-Am, so you take a stock Can-Am, and if you take all the springs off the shocks and you bottom it out, all the way out, it'll lay the skid plate on the ground with the tires aired up.
Man.
Yeah. And so, like, I mean, or if it's not on the ground, it has like a half-inch of clearance on it. So in reality, when you're jumping across somewhere with rocks or anything, and you bottom that bike all the way out, you're probably smacking the skid plate off stuff.
I was about to say, you're going to feel that right in your back.
And the new Razor S's, they're the same way.
Yeah.
They're wanting to claim, and both manufacturers are guilty of it. They want to claim we have the most suspension travel. Well, is it usable travel?
That is the huge thing that I hear over and over and over again. Is like, oh, well, this one has more travel, and it's, to me, I always ran into the argument on the full size rigs where Jeeps would want more flex or more travel out of their suspension, and that doesn't always make it the best, exact same conversation. Like, more flex can sometimes hurt you, more suspension travel can it's really kind of pointless at a certain degree. It's the same kind of like, I don't want to say it, but like kind of like pissing argument just to make it one sound better than the other.
For sure. Definitely, and that just goes to say, like, I might tell one of our secrets here. Our front shocks, we actually shorten them so they don't stretch out as far.
Yeah, I think that's amazing.
And it's just, it helps with weight transfer in the bike, and there's more to it. You can't just go short the front shocks and gain all the benefit from that.
Yeah, you're gonna have people cutting like 2 inches out of the piston in the shock.
There's a little more to it than just doing that. There's a few other factors that kind of all work together.
Yeah.
And and a little plug for Gary Hinkle. He's the guy that does my suspension, and he can tell you all the benefits and withdrawals and all that too.
Does he have a business name or an Instagram, anything like that, where people can go check him out?
Yeah, G-Force Racing.
G-Force Racing.
G-Force Technology. Sorry.
Okay, G-Force Technology. Okay.
Yeah.
Is he on? He's on Facebook.
Yeah, he's on Facebook. I share him and tag him and post all the time. He was actually at Windrock, and this is a testament, to him. I really put his shocks on, ran them. We went to Windrock, we raced. I broke that rear shock, and he was there because he does the endurance racing. He has a factory Can-Am rider that he'll go to races if you ask him or whatever.
Yeah,
and he had close, and he'll help anybody that's on his suspension. It doesn't matter what you're doing, who you are, if you're the championship guy or you're the bottom of the barrel. He don't care.
Yeah.
If you buy parts from him, he's dedicated to you. And so he come over to me, and he's like, he knew I broke the shock, and he ran over there, and we pulled the shocks off the endurance bike, which are really, the spring rates are the same, but the valving on them is completely different. Two different bikes. And he sat there and he goes, well, he counted what I had the shock set at, and he goes, I'm going to change these. I should be able to get them pretty close. And this is off of guessing. You got different shim stacks in there, and he guessed, and he got them. I mean, I couldn't tell a difference.
That's
driving.
amazing.
Let's put it that way. I ran it felt like I was on the same exact bike I was in. The first.
Yeah, that's just a testament to experience and good craftsmanship and good skill.
Yeah, and so. And then there's no way. I mean, I could have changed the shocks out myself, and I would have been able to make the second run. but I don't think I would have had as good a run as I had without him. There's no way.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have been able to, I wouldn't have been able to guess and get them shocks that close. Unless it was just dumb luck.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
so that's one of the things. And he helps like Travis Skelton. He does his shock. He does a lot more shocks than people realize. Kyle Chaney. He does a lot of big names, and these guys all go to him because of what he's capable of.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for going to let somebody else figure out the hard way that somebody's no good, and then if everybody's using the same guy, man, hit him up. Obviously something's working,
Yeah, and he's a real down to earth guy. You call, you talk to him. You don't, every time I call, he's the one. He may have to call you back because he not only builds the shocks and answers the phone, and he kind of does everything. So you leave him a message, and he'll call you back by the end of the day. I've never had a day where I left him a message and he hasn't called me back.
That's amazing. That's the difference that makes somebody, you want to do business with somebody.
Yeah. So and that's pretty cool. Not to get all completely off subject, but that's something he's really good at, and he takes really good care of people. So I gotta definitely give hats off to him for helping me and stuff. And then back to our conversation of the 72 and the 64. So I've got a trail bike. I run the 72, and I really don't have a problem. But I got tree kickers on it, and I'm not afraid to lay it against a tree and spin it around.
Sure.
So I know some people get a little leery of doing that with their new bike, which I understand. I completely understand that.
Yeah.
But it's something I bought it to ride. I'm going to ride it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm one of those guys that like the first times I run through my plastics, I cringed and it hurt. And I had someone who actually listens to the podcast. I got stuck on a hill the other day and just got dug out, and he's like, "Well, you can reverse out," and I'm like, "Well, there's a tree, and I'm not over my taillights yet because he's like, you just bob your bed, all this and that." I'm like, I still like my taillights. I'm not ready for it yet. Someday I will do it, but they're not destroyed yet, so I'm not going to purposely destroy them.
Not until I rip them all off.
Yeah, exactly.
Rip them all off, that's when I'll start.
Exactly.
I'll start doing it.
Exactly.
And, so back to that whole conversation, like, it's a full body, has a radio in it. It's literally a full-blown bike. The only thing it has different is the radiators in the back.
Okay.
Because I smashed that once.
Nice.
Like we'll run through all the trails, and I don't have any problems with getting it through the trails.
Mm-hmm.
And partially because I race, and I can judge really well on the width of thing. And so I can see where some people in a 72 would maybe cringe to go through places.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't bother me as much. But most of the time, pretty much anywhere, like unless you get into a really slow section where it's tight on a 64-inch bike, but like all your general riding trails, even people go, "Oh, this is made for a narrow bike." I can run right through it in a 72-inch bike. Yeah. But I will say, when it comes to endurance racing, that 64-inch wide bike, I can go run that same trail, and I'll run it 15 mile an hour faster.
Yeah.
Because I'm more comfortable, because I'm like, I'm nowhere close to a tree.
So let me ask you this. So I'm someone who's looking to go buy a Can-Am, and I live in the southeast. Do I go get the 64 or do I go get the 72? Because the 72 does have benefits on its own, things like that. Which one are you going to tell me to go buy?
I personally like the 72.
Okay.
Just because, like, especially in this, like, if you're doing, like, your average rider does a little more crawling. Mm-hmm. They're normally not running super fast through the trails, and if you're not afraid, like, I'll get into trees and I'll let the front tires rub up against trees, whatever, fit through places. That doesn't bother me. I know some people are really particular and they're worried about scratching their rims or whatever. Well, then you probably want a 64.
Well, you probably want something other than a side-by-side.
And I've ran into people like that on the trail. They're like, "How'd you go through there?" I'm like, "Oh, let it slide down the tree kicker. That's what it's there for."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, I don't want to scratch up my bike." And I'm like, I get that, but I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I can't relate.
Yeah, I don't go out and try to rip my plastics off my bike,
right.
But if they get scratched up, well, they got scratched up.
Yeah.
And, so depending on how you ride, like, I like this 72 because I notice I take the front sway bar off mine. I pull it off, and it still has, it's actually getting a Halo 30 because I'm getting ready to go to Windrock to ride for a week in July. But with the stock diff, I noticed without the front sway bar on it, it'll flex and move around enough that it'll rock crawl really well.
Good. Yeah, that's really good to know.
Really. And another thing that we're going to do is we're going to they make an electric disconnect sway bar now for them.
Yeah.
Halo Rockers do. And so I talked to him, and he's had really good success out of it. So I was like, fine, I'm buying one.
There you go.
He convinced me to do it, so I'm going to put it on my trail bike for when we go to Windrock. That way I can, you just push a button and it disconnects, and then you can actually take advantage of that, 2 foot of travel.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it'll actually benefit you a little bit more just with, them few little things. And so with that aspect of it, I noticed that like the 72-inch wide bike will crawl up ledges and stuff easier than the 64s do. But if you're doing like more of like a GNCC style or like an endurance style race, like riding, where you ride more aggressively through the woods and you're trying to carry speed, I will say the 64-inch wide bike, you feel more comfortable in because you're like you're narrower, so you're like, oh, I can fit through here. I don't even got to let off the gas. Yeah. So it really, I think it depends on the rider and what they're going to do.
Okay. Well, I think that's a definitely like a sufficient answer, and I've been in the 72-inch before, and it's bigger, but it's really not that much bigger. You can exactly what you said. You can get through, and you might get a couple extra scratches here and there, but at the end of the day, you're out there beating on the machine, so it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, exactly.
So, bouncing back to the race season for this year, obviously you're going to be at all the Southern Rock Racing Series events. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All the Southern Rock Racing Series. There's a chance you'll be at some of the Pro Rock. If not, maybe your brother will be. The Ultra 4 East Coast Endurance Racing. You'll be at all of those or some of those.
I'll be at some of those.
Okay.
Endurance Racing. So I'll probably run all of them that are in junction with Southern Rock Racing.
Right.
And then we'll run the Bounty Series that's also in junction with Southern Rock, like the normal Southern Rock races. And then the Pro Rock races, any of them I can make it to, I'll go hit.
Okay.
And then, so that's the main thing. There might be like an odd race. I might get bored because we have a big gap in the middle of, I think, June and July. Where like there's no races, so I'll probably get antsy and go race somewhere.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's just so hot. I know why they take a break for a while.
Yeah, definitely. And depending on, we got that big trip we do in July. My whole family, sorry, I shouldn't say we. My whole family does. We'll actually, I think there's probably 15 or 20 of us that'll all go out riding.
Yeah.
And and so we're actually going to Windrock this year.
That's amazing, man. You guys are going to
So
have a
if
blast.
you guys are out here and you see us, come and say hi, whatever. Anybody's listening, more than welcome. We're all pretty open and happy to let anybody join in that wants.
Yeah, so are you guys going to ride just Windrock? Or are you guys going to... One thing that me and my clan do when we go out there, we'll start at Windrock and we'll ride to Brimstone or we'll ride to Royal Blue from Windrock, just via trails and roads and things like that. Do you guys go out there and just hit trails, or are y'all going to try to go somewhere or go see something?
So we're just kind of going out there open to anything. So this is like, we probably messed up. So a couple years back, it ain't real often we went to Colorado last year. Every year we try to go on one big riding trip.
Yeah.
And I'm from Southern Illinois, so it's an 8.5-hour drive, 8-hour drive to Windrock for us.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And so we went out to Royal Blue. It's been, it was before I started racing. Racing Southern Rock stuff. And we went out there riding, and we didn't realize it at the time, but I'm assuming we dropped in, I forgot what campground we stayed at, but we got into part of the riding, and it was not that. It was like just a little section, and we covered it all in no time.
Royal Blue is not awesome. It's okay, but not awesome.
And that's kind of the impression we got. And so, we were really, kind of turned off to it. We're like, we don't go out there anymore. We'll go to these other parks that we know, and we've had a lot more fun at. And so then we ended up, my brother's actually out here testing his endurance bike right now. I don't know if you guys can hear him in the background, but anyways, so we got kind of turned off when I started racing, and we went out to Windrock, and everybody was talking about it, and I was like, all right, let's go run some trails. I want to go see more. And so we went and ran it, and then I found out, how big it was, and I found out, all this information. I'm like, okay, well, this is like what I want. This is the riding I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I finally convinced the rest of our family, like, we got to go out here. And they're like, well, we went to Royal Blue, and it was just fire roads, and it was kind of not fun.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, this park's way better, I promise. And so I finally got them all convinced, and they all looked it up, and they're like, all right, cool, so we're going to go and ride. But we've never really rode there. Like, we haven't, I mean, I've covered a trail for like 2 hours, 3 hours I rode in the park.
So let me tell you, there's a guy out there, I don't have his information. One of the guys I go with, he has all of it hooked up for him. He has every trail in Windrock, Brimstone, Royal Blue all mapped together. And he also has them hooked up to TWRA land, which is like a public land that you can go hunt on and trail ride on. The only thing that you'll need is a high impact license from Tennessee. It's like $18 per person. And what we do is you can do some Googling. In Brimstone, there's something called the Eternal Flame, which is just a crack in the ground where there's a fire that's been going for who knows how long, and you can. I don't think it's supposed to. You can put it out, and then you can light a match and throw it down there, and it just blows back up again. It's always lit. There's tons of waterfalls. Finding the old Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary is really cool. They just turned that into a distillery, which is really close to Windrock. There's tons of things out there, the windmills, that you can do, and especially, it sounds like you guys move pretty quick. If you move fast enough, we would do, I think one weekend we did something like 400 miles in 2 days, and it's amazing. I mean, it's amazing. What I would really strongly recommend, though, is downloading a map to a GPS unit for Windrock and try and find the TWRA lands, and I can send these to you after we get done with the podcast.
Yeah, definitely send. And I didn't know if anybody had a map like that. I've actually been talking to a few people I race with, and because everybody knows trails there, like from them,
yeah.
like, I'll go over here, and I'm like, does anybody have it like GPS out on a map? Because I'm not familiar with nothing.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you can't tell me, to go to this point and then go over here.
Yeah. Well, I'll get that information over to you. I think it was like maybe a couple $100, and you got all the maps, and the guy has mapped out like every side trail. And there's a few on there that we found that had like sunk in or something like that, and you couldn't cross them. But you're never going to find somewhere that you're never going to be abandoned. You're never going to get lost. It's got TWRA, and it's even got if you Google it and you pre-plan ahead, you can plan a route and get to everything that you want to get to, like site-wise. Because a lot of those trails aren't marked or anything, and having a little GPS, a little Garmin or iPad set up with all the maps saved on there, dude, you could ride for a month and not ride the same trail twice.
Okay, see, that's awesome to me. That right there, like, and I like finding information because like we went to Colorado too, and we just happened to meet up with locals out there. Yeah, and it's the same way out there. Like, if you go there enough and you know a little bit, you can ride all over the place. But if you don't know, and it's kind of, I think it's, I don't know, I have my opinion about it. Yeah. But people will put like private property signs right up next to the road,
right?
To where it makes you feel like you're driving down a rock lane or something.
Yep.
That's something else. So you'll turn around and go back.
Yep.
And you'll find out from locals, no, that's a road. You can ride that. That's federal ground. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that out there, and I know there's one where there was like someone had put up like big chain wire and whatnot, and it's like no trespassing, but 500 feet behind that there's a sign that says TWRA public land, and it's just like, well, that would have killed our entire trip, Yeah,
and there's people that do that stuff, and it's like, I have my opinion about them, like I said.
Yeah.
I keep it to myself.
Yeah.
And so, and it's nice to, like, I would highly suggest, I don't know if you do it, if you know where to find maps and stuff like that.
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll actually include that in the pre-roll for the podcast. So for those listening, you guys will have that information, and I'll get that information over to you. I'll text my guy here in just a few minutes and see if I can't get that for you. And I think he ends up just sending you like a file that you upload to your GPS, and you go from there.
Yeah, see, that'd be awesome. That'd definitely be something interested in.
Yeah, for sure. And if you guys do get a chance, if y'all are going to be out there for a while, Windrock is really rocky and rough. In my opinion, it's a little harder to go fast. Brimstone you can get moving pretty quick. Brimstone is really cool, and it's just down the road. Like I said, you can even get to Brimstone from Windrock via trails. And
is that on the north side of Windrock or south side?
Yeah, it is going to be on the northeast side. So Windrock is kind of, and for those listening, I could be totally wrong, but if my understanding is correct, Windrock is kind of like southwest of the center of it all. You cross the interstate, and you end up in Brimstone, and you kind of come back south a little bit, like southeast from Brimstone, and that's when you hit Royal Blue. And so it's all connected. I think there's like a couple sections where you may have to jump on a road for a minute, but I think you'd be all right. Y'all didn't hear it here, but we've jumped on there with my buggy and stuff like that, and I've passed state troopers before, and they're pretty good out there.
Yeah, I know. We went with a bunch of buddies racing down there, and we ended up going through McDonald's.
Yeah.
And side by side.
Man,
I have no idea where we were at, but I will admit the people at McDonald's didn't even that was normal.
Yeah.
Like we pulled in, and I'm like, this is gonna go downhill somewhere, and I'm like, because I'm used to, like up here where we're at, if you run on the roads and stuff, we'll run on some back roads.
Yeah.
If you meet a cop, you might want to get on it pretty hard.
Yeah. No, man, I'll tell you, I got one story that is just crazy. Petros is the name of the city where the Brushy Mountain State Prison is, and you can drive. Trail 21 or 27 in Windrock will dump you into a creek. It's the craziest thing. It'll dump you right out to the prison if you go up just a little bit. But we pulled into town. We sat at the local, kind of diner and got a pizza. And we're talking to I think he was like the owner of the diner. He was owner of the bar down the road. And he was like on like the city council. Like it's a super small town. And this guy was telling us how to get back to Windrock. And he's like, yeah, just go through this neighborhood and then get in the creek. And then, take this trail and you'll shoot you back on Trail 21. And first off, I was like, where are we? what year is it? But second, on top of that, his bar down the road, I kid you not, Paul, had a drive-through like beer, and you could just. We drove up, and I think we showed up on like a late Saturday night or something, and we drove up on our Razors, and you can literally go through the drive-through and get a beer. And I was like, all right, like I may be ruining somebody's good time here, but it was probably one of the funniest things I've ever experienced, because we saw it. We saw there was a drive-through. We walk up. Next thing you know, we're like in there talking to them. We actually met some guys who were from the Tennessee Ghost Hunters who were going to stay in the prison for that night.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. The people you meet out there, Paul, it's a huge spectrum. I'll say it like that. You meet a bunch of different people, and we walk up and they're like, "Yeah, you can drive through the drive-through and get a beer." And I was just like, is this not illegal here? Like,
that is so awesome.
Yeah. So do some exploring. Do some research ahead of time. There's tons of stuff to see out there. One thing I'd really recommend is Googling the Dragon's Back, because it'll actually take you to a mountaintop where they used to mine sandstone. And there's so much residue left over from when they mined it that it's like a beach on top of this mountain. I've been there a bunch of times. It's really cool. But you can literally pick up, you can do sand donuts. There's not dunes or anything, but there's enough to get in there and really throw up some sand. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I think it's called Panama City, is like the name of the kind of area.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's something. And seeing, we went to Royal Blue, and when you type in Royal Blue, you come up with 9,000 campgrounds.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different things. It's
kind of hard to find good information about like all the information. I found a lot of this stuff out through people I race with.
Yeah.
And then you find out for especially us like northern. I guess I'm up north. I should call myself a northern. I really don't like that. But from up here, we can't go out and ride like that. There's people around us, they'll flat out shoot you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I will say, be careful who you run up on, because I know a couple guys will have, some stuff wrapped around their legs and, pistols you can't see, stuff like that. So I always tell people, if you're going to go out and you're going to be out at night, make sure you've got something to protect yourself with.
Yeah, and it's but around here, you guys can ride, government property and jump around. We don't have that, especially where I'm from.
Yeah.
It's all farm ground. So it's flat, it's farm ground, and it's owned by somebody. You know? none of it's government owned. It's all owned by somebody, and it's all farm ground, and they don't let you ride unless you know the people personally. You don't ride and jump, from property to property or even, whatever. So like when we go down there, we're all relatively hesitant on we see no trespassing signs. We're like, okay, let's not go that way. But then, but then we found out like Colorado and that people do that just to deter people. And what you're doing is completely legal, and it's where you can go. But it's nice to have somewhere to find that information out. Like, hey, these are places you can actually ride. This here's a little gray area, but these are all legit.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. After the podcast, I'll send you a bunch of different material that we found. We go up there. I think one year we went up there 10 times for a weekend, and we just rode for we do 8 hours one way and 8 hours back.
Yeah, see that's awesome. I think that'd be great. And not just for me. I imagine there's a lot more people than just me that probably would look for information like that. Yeah,
and for those listening, I'll put some information on the podcast Facebook, facebook.com/Racing on the Rocks, and I'll put it out there because it's one of those things that that's the best riding I've ever seen in my life, hands down.
Yeah, it's definitely something. Like we said, we rode it for I think about 3 hours. We were out there. After racing, we went with a couple guys that were locals, and they ran us around through some of this is a cool spot to look out. Let's go over here real quick. Yeah. So we stopped over. We were moving, and they're like, "Oh, don't worry, you ain't covered none of the park.
Yeah,
like you just pretty much got in the front gate."
It's something like 175,000 acres altogether.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's an insane amount, especially when you go from like AOP and parks like on this side, like on the west side of the state where they're like 500,000 acres is huge.
Yeah.
And then you go out there and they're like, yeah, this park's 72,000 acres and this one's 50,000 and you can ride all of them. It's like, oh, so there's a lot of property covered.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, Paul. We're just now barking on 2 hours, so.
Wow.
Well, yeah, I know it goes quick, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So if you want to go ahead and if there's anybody you want to give a shout out to, if there's anybody, sponsors, people, anything like that, feel free. Now's your time.
All right. Christy and my brother Nathan, I got to give a shout out to both of them and my younger brother Tommy. Without all them, my family, there's no way I could do this, what I do. And this is still pretty cool to me that people call me want to do an interview.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
So, a huge thanks to them to allowing me to, kind of chase my dream, so to speak, and do this stuff. And not only that, to do it with me also, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then I got to give a shout out to all my sponsors, Halo Lockers, RCB, HCR Suspension, Gear Grabber Shifters, E-Power Steering, Pitbull Tires, and Gary at G-Force. So, all them guys, awesome job. I greatly appreciate all your help and supporting me and allowing me to kind of do what I love and chase this dream of racing. So, and that's pretty awesome. And then a little shout out to anybody going to King of the Hammers next year. If you guys got any good information about it, I'm planning on going. Right now, I'm pretty confident we're going to go out there just to check it all out.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll race or not, but
I would. I've got a few guys that I'll send you the information. And Dustin Robbins, his podcast will be up soon. He's the All Things UTV owner, and he races that unit. He talks a lot about King of Hammers and his experience. This part 2 of Hubert Rowland, he talks about King of Hammers quite a bit. And
listen to that.
Yeah, James Cantrell too mentions it a little bit. But Dustin, he raced last year, and he's going to race this year, and he's going for this next year, 2020. He's got his eyes set on trying to win. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I definitely would recommend getting with him. He's actually racing this weekend at the Stampede in his brand new Turbo S Velocity unit. So, yeah, I think he actually snagged the one that won King of Hammers. He actually just picked it up.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was like, man, it works good. So I know it works.
Yeah, that is true. I didn't think about that. It works good if it did that.
Yeah, but if that's all you got, man, it's been amazing talking to you. This has probably been one of my favorite podcasts we've done so far. it's just been really nice to get to talk to not only a super nice guy, but somebody who races a completely different platform than everyone else, who's going to be out there exploring new things, has a great history, and most importantly is the current champion of the UTV series. So I'm really excited about getting this out to everybody, and I'll let you know how it goes. And from there,
yeah, sure.
we'll just...
And that goes for anybody that races Can-Ams or has general questions. You feel free, that's kind of what people, help me, sponsor me, and all that for, is to help, average riders. Like, you did that little podcast with Hubert about, majority of the market's an average rider. It's not a racer. So anybody that wants, any information, and like I said, I try not to put nothing on my race bike that I don't think I need.
Yeah.
I don't go put stuff on there just to say I have it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a super important thing.
It's what I think I need to race, and you can ask me, and I'll tell you the reason. I'll tell you any reason why to anybody, why I run what product I run, whatever, So feel free to ask me, and I'll help you any way I can. I know a lot of people ain't got a ton of money to put into a bike. It's a huge investment in itself. So, I'm not here to try to force products down your throat. And I told every one of my sponsors that whenever they got on board with me, I told them flat out, I'm not here to push a product I don't believe in, and I will not do it. Mm-hmm. And I still stand behind that to this very moment. So,
well, that's amazing, man. People on Instagram, Facebook, where can they find you?
Facebook's more. You can find me on Instagram at Paul Wolff Racing, but I'm more active on Facebook. Facebook, you'll get a lot more information.
Okay.
And also, you message me or whatever on there too.
Now, is that under Paul Wolff Racing, or is that for just Paul Wolff?
Paul Wolff Racing. Both of them are on Paul Wolff Racing.
Okay.
My personal page, I try to keep it personal and separate from it. So.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. Paul, thanks again, man. It's just, like I said, definitely been one of my favorites, and I'll have to catch up with you, if not in the middle of the season, and if not at AOP. If you want to come down, let me know. If not at AOP, man, then definitely at the end of the season, and we'll catch back up and see what your thoughts were about everything you did this year, and we'll see if we can, can't have you talk about how you won your second championship.
Hey, I hope so, for sure. I definitely hope that's the case, and this goes out for you and anybody. If you guys see me out at a race, come up and say something to me. Definitely, I'm more than happy to talk to people. I still find it impressive people want to talk to me.
Well, I'm sure you got nothing but more of that in the future, Paul.
I hope so. So have a good day, and don't work too hard today.
Yeah, sounds good. You do the same. Enjoy your weekend.
Will do. We'll see you.
All right, thanks, buddy.
All right, everybody, thanks for listening. And I want to give one more plug. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, all that fun stuff. We're hosting a contest. That contest is found on the Facebook. It's found on the Instagram. All you got to do is sign up for our newsletter. Follow the links. It's on like every post we put up. And what that'll do at the end of the Rock Racing Series for 2019, we're going to pick a winner. We got a whole bunch of free crap. Free stuff from Laser Nut, Rogers Racing. I've got a 1000 XP drivetrain belt that's going in there. A bunch of free stuff, and we're going to keep collecting. At the end of the season, we're all just going to give it away. It's going to be awesome. One lucky person is going to win it all. You can enter on Facebook and Instagram, and that's all you got from me. So I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe, like, share, do everything you can. Have a good one.